everybody. It's Dave here, Darren over there. Sorry we're late. Or I'm late. I was late putting in the last little bits. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers in the pre-show. I'm sure that's a topic that'll be brought up today. But today we're going to talk about the Vikings' insane free agency we've had. And boy, has it. We've got three themes for you today. We're going to start off with the first wave and our thoughts, and then we're going to go into most likely the second wave in our thoughts. And then we're going to hit the bits and pieces of this week in Vikings land, as usual. And we got some news today, some sad news. We'll end the show with it, but we will see. I want to welcome everybody that's here already. You guys absolutely rock, and you have rocked all week. Vikings First and SKOL has greatly appreciated you watching. And so let's get going with two old bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey everybody, it's Dave again and Darren over there. How's Darren in the Great White North today?
Future's so bright, Dave. Gotta wear shades.
Yeah. It is bright. I will grant you that. What has happened this week is just amazing. We as fans have asked for certain things to be done, and it looks like they have been. And it's a treat. So.
Can't disagree with you at all on that one, Dave. How it all works out in the end, well, we'll get to that. But yeah,
come February.
A lot of activity and a lot of, I think, productive activity this week by the Vikings and their front office.
Yes. Northvia says, obviously missing Mexico. All the way up in northern Canada, I would say so.
Yes.
But
sunny and pretty cold today, which is what we call March. here in the Northwest Territories. Anyway, I'm going to take these sunglasses off here because
you can't see.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, you notice I said Vikings insane free agency, and they hit up on items of need. We've got 4 round bellies that grace the thumbnail today. And you know how I feel about my round bellies. It's wonderful.
You love them. You love them.
All right. Now on to theme 1. And free agency.
Indeed, free agency. In the next segment, we're going to Dave and I are going to focus on, and thanks to everybody who's showed up in droves and all the comments. Sorry we were a little late, like Dave said, but Dave was just fixing to get those world-class graphics he always got for you to make the show even more interesting, and he has done that. So thanks for hanging in there. But yeah, second theme we're going to get into are Dave and I, our likes and dislikes from free agency. The dislikes are pretty minimal, but this segment just wanted to go over with the first wave of free agency is pretty much over, Dave. So wanted to, I guess, look at what I thought make a few observations about some of the central themes that I've seen from the 2025 Minnesota Vikings free agency thus far in the first wave. And still more work to do, which is going to go for the Vikings to do, and then they're going to go on and do that from between now until the draft gets going. But it's the first thing that kind of struck me, Dave, is that the Vikings have really looked to me, based on a lot of their moves that they made this week, that they believe that they are going to be very, very competitive in 2025. And that they feel with the roster that they had, with the right additions, that they can compete for an NFC championship and a Super Bowl, even with, it looks like, an inexperienced second-year quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. They do not think, based on the moves that they have made this week, particularly I'm talking about signing like the 30-year-old and 30-plus-year-old guys that they did. They don't think that they're going to take a step back with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback based on those signings, because the signings of, Dave, I don't think that you signed Jonathan Allen, 30 years old. I don't think you signed Javon Hargrave, 32 years old. I don't think you signed Ryan Kelly, also 32 years old. I don't think you signed 30-year-old Aaron Jones, veterans with proven track records, but getting up there a bit in age. I don't think a rebuilding team definitely doesn't make those kind of signings like the Vikings did, committing in some cases multiple years to these 30-something football players and multi-millions in guaranteed money to all of these guys. That is something a rebuilding team wouldn't do. I don't think even Harrison Smith, bringing him back, another sign at 36 years old, I don't think that a rebuilding team does that. I don't think a team that felt that they weren't 100% sure how next season was going to go. Like, maybe they feel they're on the cusp of a playoff berth, but maybe not a Super Bowl contender yet with their roster. They're not making these kind of moves either. But Kwesi Adofo-Mensah did. He went after some guys where I think he looked at the roster based on how things went last year in 2024 and said, look, we got a strong roster here, guys. There are some roster holes there. We need to improve in certain areas. But if we make the right additions with guys, even if they're veterans and they might be a little bit pricey, I think that those veterans with the proven track record, who are better than what we had in those positions last year, they can put us over the top. And that's what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has done. And it's something that he has not done in his previous 3 years in free agency, I think, is, commit multiple years in contracts in some cases and multiple in large sums of guaranteed money to guys who are 30 years old and older. That is not the way he has operated in previous free agencies. And part of that is because, I think, looking at the roster, again, he thinks that a few veteran additions are going to be something that puts us over the top. And also the Vikings haven't had the cap space to do that in the past either. So this is also a function of having more cap space than they've had since probably 2013, 2014 in free agency. That's one thing that really struck me about what the Vikings have done in the first wave of free agency. I think a second thing that is struck me was that, and this is related to the 30-somethings and signing those, is that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, as our general manager, I think really he deviated quite a bit from his free agency strategy the previous 3 years, Dave, in signing a guy like Jonathan Allen, who's 30 years old and there are some signs that he's not the player that he was 2 or 3 years ago. But again, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah the Vikings decided to sign him up for, pretty significant sum of money, even though we've learned since that the deal wasn't quite as rich as initially leaked out. But Jonathan Allen is one. I think that the same thing with Ryan Kelly, the 2 years and whatever million he got for a 32-year-old center with some injury issues. Javon Hargrave, 32, coming off a serious pec injury, but the Vikings signed him for 2 years. Hitman, Aaron Jones, again. In the past, of course, the Vikings have been pretty consistent in that if they brought in a guy who was 30 years old or older, it was a 1-year deal for a minimum amount of money, a Dean Lowry type of signing, a Jonathan Bullard type of signing. They really Kwesi Adofo-Mensah went against that this year. In the past, again, he has looked for guys. It's almost been exclusively when he's committing multiple years and big money to a free agent, it's always been to a guy coming off usually his rookie contract. The Vikings didn't really sign any of those guys this time around. They went after these vets. And I think that's different than what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has done in the past. And it's a sign of where the roster is at right now. They've got enough younger players on just starting their second contract that they can do that. And like a Theo Jackson, for instance. And also, again, with the salary cap, the amount of salary cap that we had, that kind of also showed to me that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is flexible in his free agent strategy, Dave, and that he's not married to one way of building a roster in free agency or just building a roster in total. Unlike the Green Bay Packers, who have consistently been draft and develop, we're going to rarely go into free agency. The Vikings have done free agency pretty heavily the past 2 years, and this year they kind of changed how they went about that based on the circumstances of the roster and the players that were out there. And I applaud that for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah because I think flexibility is important. You can't just be set in one way of doing things because conditions change every year on the free agency market as for who is available, and also conditions change with the state of your roster. And so what might have been the way to do things the previous year might not be the way you can do things this year. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah pivoted on that, and I think that's a smart move. I think the third thing that struck me about this free agency, Dave, was that I think the Vikings in certain cases, and it surprised me a bit, they really valued retaining their own in-house free agents and made a real concerted effort to bring those guys back. You saw that with Byron Murphy Jr. and the amount of money they committed to him. I didn't think, when we talked about this last week, Dave, I thought that if he hit free agency come Monday in the legal tampering period, we probably weren't going to be getting him back. But the Vikings had other ideas, and they worked really hard with him to see if they could come up with a deal that was, that Murphy was good with and the Vikings were good with. And they were able to do that and sign probably their most important in-house free agent on the team. They got that done. You saw them doing it with Aaron Jones, different situation and his age and the type of position he's at. But again, they really valued bringing him back for 2 years for about $20 million. That's a pretty significant sum for a guy who'll turn 31 in December of 2025. And again, I think that showed that they really valued what Aaron Jones brought to the team last year and what they think he can bring to the team this year. They don't think he's done. And same thing with bringing back Hitman, and Theo Jackson, deciding to commit to him as a starter. Looks like he'll probably be our starter at free safety, even though he's doesn't have an extensive track record in the NFL. But they did that. And even though they didn't re-sign Cam Bynum, I think that it's pretty clear from the reports that came out that there have been several months of trying to get something done with Cam. They just couldn't agree to what was the right price and the right amount of years. And sometimes that happens with players. But I think the Vikings did value Cam Bynum and what he brought to the team. They did value and want to bring him back, but there was a certain price that they didn't think it was worth. They get good value of the money for doing so. But just another thing, because some years, you might have free agents, but they're either you're not too concerned about letting them go, like Pat Jones III, for instance. I think the Vikings didn't think that. They thought they had better options and let him sign elsewhere in that case. I think the fourth and final thing about free agency that I felt was a theme, Dave, was really. We knew what the Vikings roster weaknesses were heading into this. We talked about it on several shows for several months. The biggies were the interior offensive line, guard and center, and the defensive line, nose tackle, defensive end. The Vikings really had to address that. Corner as well. And I think particularly on the offensive line and the defensive line, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah addressed those areas, and significantly he addressed those. Signing Will Freeze, signing Ryan Kelly, signing Jonathan Allen, signing Javon Hargrave. Those are all, and Will Freeze got the biggest deal of anybody. And that was, so I think that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah really attacked the weaknesses. He said the Vikings would be aggressive in free agency in turning weaknesses into strengths. I think during the first wave of free agency, he's been able to do that. They also did address cornerback. with the Murphy signing and with the Isaiah Rodgers signing, I think there's still a little bit more work to do there. But there's still some interesting, a little bit older talent still available at corner that the Vikings could bring in. It might not be right away. It might be a little bit later on, like what happened to Stefan Gilmore, maybe not quite that late, but the Vikings, I think, are still going to do some things there, maybe even in the draft. But again, if you wanted Kwesi Adofo-Mensah to address the roster weaknesses, he did that: running back, corner, interior offensive line, and along the defensive line. And to that, I think you got to say, well done to Kwesi.
Yeah, without a doubt. He hit it, and he hit it keeping J.J. McCarthy upright and throwing the football down there. Now, Jose, I respect your opinions. Don't have to agree with them, but I do believe he will process well, and he will be a top 10 quarterback when all is said and done, especially since we did address Will Fries at guard, and I believe it's pronounced fries, like in hamburger and fries.
I keep on saying freeze, but it is fries.
And for a 5-year deal, he's going to be an anchor for this team for quite a while, and he looked good. We got Kelly to replace Bradbury. Bradbury is still on the team. He has not been released, and he has not been traded yet. They have indicated that they want Bradbury to be traded if possible, which tells the world, yeah, just wait till we release him, then you can get him for less. But it is. But I think it's a good move. And I think Kwesi has just banged it out of the ballpark in the early part of free agency, just knocked it off. And I wasn't quite getting the 30-year-old plus where you're going with that from the notes. And I was going to talk you off the ledge because you're thinking they're too old, needed their Geritol and their walkers and all that. I don't think they are. Big guys, strength, that play with strength, and both Hargrave and Allen their game is with strength. It's not a speed game. They're not quick around the corner type of deal. They're plowing through you. That tends to last longer in this league than guys that strictly rely on their speed to get around the corner. In this case, on the interior, you want strength. You want to be able to muscle interior offensive linemen out of the way. And they've got a track record, both of them, of doing it at a very, very high standard. And both sides of the ball, I couldn't be more pleased with what they did early, whether it be re-signing Jones and Theo Jackson, extending him, and then getting the 4 big round bellies. I just thought that was chef's kiss. It was beautiful. And Kwesi did fantastic.
And you made a good point when we were talking about this during the week, Dave, when I was talking about those 30-year-old players and the fact that some of them, Kelly, Allen, and Hargrave, have all had dealt with some serious injuries either last year or this year or both. And they've missed time and significant time. But you talked about how, and we've mentioned this on previous shows too, that the Vikings have really made on the training staff and the rehabilitation staff, the rehab programs or the prehab programs that they do individually for players, that the Vikings have really invested in the staff, and we assume the dollars and the training facilities to try to mitigate some of that for their aging players. And Aaron Jones is a guy who benefited from that last year. He raved about the plan they had for him before the season went on, and he said heading into the season, he felt great. And even during the season, he felt great at times. And we know he was nicked up, ribs, hamstring at times, but he never missed a game. And I think the Vikings feel somewhat confident that they have the staff that can put the plans in place and do the work on these older players that might get nicked up and take more time to recover than the younger guys, that they'll still be effective and won't miss time because of the training staff that we have in place and the work that they put in getting the plans in place so the players can be physically ready to go.
Yep. We've talked about it. I think they will be ready, and I think they'll rock. So we'll see. The only one I'm worried about is the center, because he's got neck and back, and that's always stuff. Now, as Big says, we brought in Rondell Moore for special teams. Did we sign him, Biggs? I haven't seen that.
I have not seen anything saying that he is signed yet. He did visit with the Vikings. I believe it was on Saturday, right? Or Friday.
Right. One of those 2 days, but I haven't heard him signed yet.
No.
And I would like to see it. And it could have happened, in the hour running up to the show, because I was busy loading graphics. So if he did, please let us know. That'd be great. I think it'd be a good move. He's not the only one that was brought in for special teams. There's the
Tavir Thomas.
There's
from
Tyre Thomas and the Bubba safety.
Yeah, Bolden,
the first one that was brought in, the UFL kid. He's going to be special teams. So
if he makes the team.
Now, why are you guys so hard on Jose just because he hasn't seen J.J. McCarthy do great and grand things? The only thing you could base him off of is the preseason game. And I bet he's made big-time evolutions from that, sitting back in the weekly meetings with KOC and in the every room and picking people's brains and doing the sim stuff where he's doing. I bet he'd be just fine.
And Kelly and Big Rail beat me to it. I was going to mention that Eric Wilson was another signing that the Vikings made on the weekend. And Wilson is a major special teams performer. He was when he was with the Vikings originally, and he has been with the Packers since then. And we signed him again as to be the Grugier Hill, a version of Grugier Hill this year, playing a shit ton of special teams and possibly being put into the starting lineup if Ivan Pace or Blake Cashman have to miss time in 2025.
Off-ball linebacker.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one. He returns home, the good old saying.
I always liked Eric Wilson.
I did too. So, even did a piece of artwork on him. I'll have to bring that up sometime. All right, now on to theme 2. And theme 2. More free agency.
Well, yes, we've got 3 themes today, Dave, but basically it's all free agency, just different, different takes on the free agency stuff. But we talked last theme about the kind of some of my observations about the first wave. Now going to get into you and I are going to get into those signings and maybe our likes and dislikes out of all of those signings. And so I'm going to go first. Because I love talking. But I'll get on the first one my favorite signing so far is Javon Hargrave that the Vikings have made. And yes, 32 years old. Yes, coming off a pectoral injury that cost him 14 games in 2024. Yes, 2 years for $19 million or whatever it is seems like a lot for a 32-year-old guy who's coming off a major injury. But still, until he's never been a guy who's been seriously injured up until this year, for one thing. And he is a guy that in between 2022 and since 2021, 2022, and 2023, and I think 2020, he had never had from the interior defensive line. He had never had fewer than 7 sacks from the interior in those 4 previous years until last year when he got missed most of the season. He's been well known during that time as a disruptive pass rushing menace in the NFL. And you may have heard that the Vikings didn't have much of that ability on their roster last year. Like the Vikings have nobody like Javon Hargrave, or had nobody like Javon Hargrave on their roster last year or even this year until they signed him. Pass rush win rate was 15% last year. That is well above average for a defensive tackle. And so I really like this signing. Yes, he's a bit older than maybe you would like, but he has been a guy who's shown with his counting stats or more of the advanced metrics that ESPN and PFF use. He's been a guy that shows that when he's on the field, he has not really slipped. And again, the Vikings didn't have anybody with his kind of skill set on that defensive line before. Last year, the defensive line had 47 pressures total. That was fifth fewest in the NFL. Amongst guys who played on the defensive line, the interior defensive line last year, they only totaled 7.5 sacks between them all. That was 31st in the NFL. So clearly we need some pass rush juice there, and Javon Hargrave is one of the best at it. A little older. We haven't really had anybody like that since Tom Johnson and Sheldon Richardson. And it's been 7 or 8 seasons since either of those guys played for the Vikings. So high time, the Vikings, this was a need. The Vikings identified it. They went after a guy who I think can give it to them. So well done there. That's my favorite signing so far that the Vikings have done. And paired with Jonathan Allen, hey, who knows? Those guys could really give Brian Flores. They give him something he did not have on the defensive line last year, Brian Flores, and can't wait to see what Brian Flores does with these two large gentlemen on the Vikings defense in 2025. Now, speaking of Allen, if I think, Dave, you're going to disagree with me on this one a bit, but this is the one that maybe I like the least of so far. And it's not, I don't have a severe criticism here, but, pass rush win rate for Jonathan Allen, there are signs with those metrics, that advanced stats, that he is a guy who's on the decline a bit, even though he's only 30. That's old, but it's not 32 or 33 or 34. 8% pass rush win rate last year. That is below average for interior defensive lineman. So a bit of a concern there. The injuries last year, a bit of a concern there. When you're turning 30, do I expect that pass rush win rate will jump up? I think that I don't feel that it will. On the other hand, that big 3-year, $60 million guaranteed, we have learned that $9 million of that is in probably incentives that he won't reach, and that the Vikings can get out of this contract after 2 years and save $18 million in cap space. So it's really a 2-year deal for not 60-some million, which makes it, I think, a better bet at his age. But I do worry about the injuries. I do worry about the bit of the decline Jonathan Allen is showing as a player. On the other hand, Dave, again, he's way better than anybody we had at the pass rush side of things last year or the year before that on the defensive line. And again, Brian Flores has watched the tape on these guys. And if he has signed off on Jonathan Allen and thinks he can help the Vikings defense, then I can get on board with that. But I still have concerns. This would be the one I have the most concerns about because of Allen's age and a little bit of the slippage in his pass rush win rate and his ability to rush the passer, which is what we're bringing him on for. Underrated, kind of what I think might be the best value for money signing so far. I'm going to look at Isaiah Rodgers, the signing of Isaiah Rodgers, the cornerback from who played on the Eagles last year. He looks like, again, his PFF grades from 2022 were excellent when he's with the Colts, 82.1. Last year with a really stacked Eagles defense, again, very good, 76 PFF had. He seems like he's a player who's improving. He's ascending. He just turned 27. His salary cap hit this year is only going to be around, I think, $5 million, or maybe not even that. So very affordable for the position that he's playing. The concern is that he, when people might ask, well, what was his rating in 2023? Well, he didn't play in 2023 because he was suspended the whole year for betting on his own team.
Yeah, and I think he's learned that lesson. But
yes,
hopefully,
yes. doesn't appear to be any issues last year. But, I think Rodgers is a guy that coming into free agency, I saw his name thrown around as a guy who'd be a sneaky good ad for any team in the NFL. And the Vikings got that guy, and they had a need at cornerback. And after you spent a gazillion bucks on Byron Murphy Jr., that was going to limit what you could do at cornerback. And so to get a guy like Rodgers, I think was a bit undervalued at the contract they do. I think that this is going to be a contract that is going to age well for the Vikings and for Vikings fans come middle of next season and even starting into 2026. So I like this signing for what they got him for. And it looks like he's got a chance to play a significant role in this defense. Is he a slot guy, outside guy? We'll see. Where are they going to use him? But I think that this is like an underrated good signing by the Vikings. Dave, want to hear your thoughts on a lot of this? I agree
on Rodgers completely. He's going to be a sneaky good pick that will start, I suspect. He, Blackman, and Murphy, I expect, are the three starters. And at least to start off, and, none of them are real big guys, but they're feisty and they're mean, and that's the way we're going to play it. And with that defensive line getting pressure, I think it's going to help those guys even more, and it's going to be a good deal. But he is literally a good, sneaky pick because he got in trouble. He played so well the previous year with the Colts, and then last year he was basically spot duty when he was needed, and he came in and played well. I think he's on his rise. He's entering his prime, and I think it's a great deal. It was good money. Every one of these contracts, even though we saw big money in many years, all that sort of stuff, when we got the details, it's like, whoa. Even with Fry's 5 years, $88 million. Well, there's a $20 million guarantee if we get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay. That's worth it. Well, that means 5 years, 66 or $68 million. And how much of that includes Pro Bowls, workout bonuses, all that other stuff. And it makes all these contracts so much more affordable. And even with Kelly, we can get out of it after 1 year. So the genius in that is Brzezinski and how all this was set up. He absolutely rocks. And that is just, he's I don't know what you'd call it, the bonus button for Kwesi to go on. It's just, we had all this money. We've spent, $300 million or something like that, ungodly, more than any other team over the time period, over all these contracts we have. And yet we're still of approximately $32 million available in cap space. Now in 2026, we're already over the cap, but all that can be figured out easily enough. And people can be paid bonuses early and all that sort of things. And it'll work out just fine. I think this man so far this year is doing a bang up job. Last year he had the best free agent class, bar none. When we got Van Ginkel and Cashman and other guy.
Well, Jonathan Grenard.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold, Shaq Griffin, Gilmore.
It rocked. Well, now we just got a whole bunch of as good or better guys in positions that we needed. And if it hits, oh boy. And I suspect the majority of it will. Will somebody get hurt? Probably. That's just football. That's luck. And hopefully the injury bug stays away this season. But it's, we've even, he's worked on that with the whole training staff and the health and wellness stuff. It's what they've done this year. I can't remember any GM doing this in our Vikings fandom. Spielman never had to do this on free agency that I can remember. Or before that, I don't remember where they've gone bang, 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 and gotten 6, 7, 8 starters straight off the get-go.
Yeah, it's
and we won 14 games last year.
Yeah, I think what is impressive about this is that I've seen things where people have said like NFL insiders have talked about how that the Vikings won free agency, and that always makes Dave, you and I kind of cringe a little because the football gods will quickly come down on the Vikings on that. But I'm joking a bit here, but I think it is, we got to keep in mind that that Kwesi this week did some cooking, but he's using a whole bunch of new ingredients to make a dish that we hope is going to lead to a team that's just as good or better than it was in 2024. But we don't know how that dish is all going to taste. We're only going to find out on the field in 2025, like you said. And it's almost inevitable that that last year's free agency was so damn good. Like basically Kwesi Adofo-Mensah hit on pretty much every free agent signing he made, and he hit on them big, like Darnold, like Grenard, like Van Ginkel, like Cashman. Well, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said this, about a few weeks ago, that free agency, we're going to make bets, and they're not always going to turn out like aces. So it's going to be tough for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. As good as these moves look right now, it's going to be tough for them to all work out as well as they did in 2024. I hope they do, but we do have to be prepared that, again, somebody might get injured like Marcus Davenport did in 2023 and never really got to play for us. That there might be that stuff. Some guys might just not gel in the new spot next year. Maybe they'll play better the following year, like Byron Murphy did last year. So it remains to be seen how this is all going to gel together and how it's going to work with team chemistry. But the thing for me is that the Vikings had, we don't know how it's all going to work out on the field, but Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, at least, particularly on the interior offensive line and the defensive line, he made a serious attempt to upgrade. And I have not seen that done, like you said, by any Vikings general manager ever.
We're old. We've been reporting on this team for over 2.5 decades apiece. I don't remember where they've been.
Yeah.
I mean, when we got Hutch, that was a serious effort to fix the left guard position. And that was already a pretty stacked line. But I haven't seen it where they go offense and defense and getting two guys on each side that are instant starters. I just haven't seen it. And I think and it wasn't that we were that bad. We weren't great, no, but we weren't horrible. And I love this move. Absolutely love it. He's done fantastic so far. Well, that brings us to theme 3. This week in Vikings land.
Yes, going to get to
even more free agency.
Yeah. If you wanted it, you got it. free agency all the way. So yes, and some of it isn't free agency, some of it is trades. And that's going to be our first topic. Is late yesterday, Vikings traded for 49ers running back Jordan Mason. Darren. Initially, when we were going back and forth, I was like, well, they traded another draft pick again for Jordan Mason, and this, and we got this running back class is supposed to be so good. Why'd they do that? But, after thinking about it for a few hours and looking at the compensation they gave for Mason, I'm liking this. And you might remember last year, Jordan Mason in game 2 against the Vikings in the bank, he ran for 20 carries, 100 yards, 1 touchdown. That's 5 yards per carry, folks. I think that performance by Mason clearly hadn't made an impression on Kevin O'Connell and the rest of the Vikings offensive staff and their front office, because, again, they traded a 6th-rounder, next year's 6th-rounder, which was what the pick that they got for Ed Ingram, trading him to the Texans. And then they're swapping out the 5th round. They swapped out draft positions in this draft. The Vikings 160th pick in the 5th round is going to the 49ers, and the 49ers are giving us their 6th round pick, 187 in this year's draft. So I guess it works out to they gave up, I was reading today, they gave up kind of a late 5th round compensation to get Jordan Mason, who had a very good year last year, ran for well over 700 yards, missed the last 4 games with a high ankle sprain. Otherwise, he probably would have come close to rushing for 1,000 yards, even with Christian McCaffrey coming back. His advanced metrics, like the expected yards per rush and all that stuff, were like off the charts good while he played.
He's top 10.
Yeah, he turns 26 somewhere at the start of next season, so still young, not much tread on his tires. He averaged over 5 yards per carry even in the previous 2 years in limited action, but you saw him play that week too, Dave, and I saw him play in other games, and he looked really, really good. And I know that it seems like everybody who gets the ball with the San Francisco 49ers always looks really, really good in the Kyle Shanahan offense. But I like them getting Mason. It really resolves your depth issue, I think, at running back, because now you've got a guy who's proven, at least in 1 year, that he can be a number 1 running back. He's a guy that now, we love Aaron Jones, but we were concerned about the amount of workload he had last year. And the word was that the Vikings were going to need a running back by committee to take some of the load off of Aaron Jones as he gets into his age 31 season and the NFL. Well, they've done that by they've got that by trading for Mason. And also, unfortunately, if Jones does go down and misses significant time because of an injury, you've got a legit guy who can come in, who has shown he can be the number 1 running back in Mason. You couldn't say that about Ty Chandler, who I have always liked, but Chandler's kind of fallen out of favor in Egan right now. Don't even know if he'll be on the roster. So getting Mason, I think, really solidifies your running back depth. Does getting him mean the Vikings aren't going to draft a running back this year in, again, running back class that looks like it's the best and deepest it's been in a long time? I don't know about that because, again, Chandler does not have the faith of the Vikings coaching staff. And I think even though they wouldn't save money by cutting him now, they could try to trade him. Perhaps they're going to take a look at that. I don't know what value he has. Last year, he might have had more value than he does now because he was kind of come off some encouraging games with usage, a fair amount of usage late in the season with the Vikings. Last year, he started off as the number 2 guy, quickly lost his role, and he was barely seen and heard from after that. So I don't know if he has any trade value, but there could be teams that really valued him coming out of North Carolina back in 2022, and they might be willing to give us a 7th rounder, but I'm not holding my breath for it. But I don't think Chandler's spot on the Vikings roster is hardly assured, and I don't think trading Mason eliminates the Vikings from drafting a running back in this draft, which I think a lot of us thought they would do and probably wanted to see them do. But getting Mason, again, he's a good player that we've added to the roster, and all rosters can use good players. So, liking the trade.
Lang, yes, it's empty. I'm killing all my whiskey because I've got a move coming up and I need to drain all my bottles. That's what's happening. And that's the first time I've let that be known over the air. Here in about 3 weeks, I'm moving. I will no longer be in Austin. I'm moving to the St. Louis area. So get closer to Ted Glover.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to try not to have a hole in coverage at that point. But it is what it is. Now, I think the Mason trade was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We went down like 27 spots on a swap this year, and the 6th that we got from Houston for Ingram, it cost us that. For a proven top 10 running back. And the only reason he didn't have more yards last year is he got a hammy injury, like I think you mentioned. Hopefully that won't happen. And we'll be going. I think it's going to be, a 1-2 punch like we haven't seen. One of the things they want to do is fix the running game. Part of that was the interior offensive line. They've made effort. You got 2 brand new starters. You got a battle at left guard, whether that be Brandell, whether it be Rouse moving over to left guard, whether it be drafting, say, Gray Zabel.
Mm-hmm.
You got that. And I think you're going to see a better running game, which will alleviate some pressure off of J.J. McCarthy.
Big time.
Yeah. And this is a plan that was put in place a few years ago, and it's working. And I absolutely love that.
And Anthony, I would love to get Omarion Hampton too. I don't know. I think he's going to go pretty high in this draft as well, or at least he's talked about as potentially, definitely going to be selected in the first round. I don't know if I see the Vikings selecting a running back in the first round, particularly not with them trading for Mason. Mm-hmm. Makes running back much less of a need than it was 24 hours ago.
Right. Now we have 4 running backs, if I remember correctly, on the roster now. That'll go up. And I suspect because of Chandler's status that his is the one that's probably the most in dire need or in dire straits to be replaced by a draft choice. I still think we're going to draft a running back sometime, somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not necessarily round 1.
No.
All right, to the next topic. The Hitman.
So how do we all feel about Harrison Smith returning for his 14th season in the NFL, folks? That's kind of a rhetorical question because I don't think I bet you there's hardly a Viking fan out there who isn't happy that Harry is coming back, one of the most popular Vikings in recent history that I can remember. I don't think anybody has any qualms about Harry coming back for his 14th season, but because of how popular it is. But the more important question is, will Hitman be able to help us on the field? That's that's the really important question. And I think based on what I saw last year, Dave, to me, he can help us on the field. He's not going to be a weak link on the Vikings team and the defense. You just look at his PFF grades last year. 66.2 was the overall grade last year at 35 years old. Pretty solid. He really got dinged more for the pass rush grade, which was like 54.2 or whatever. But his run defense grade was 76.5, which is excellent for anybody at any age. Now, yes, he's not the player at 36 that he was at 26. The only players who are like that are usually quarterbacks. If they make it that far, they're the only ones that seem to be able to be just as good in the mid 30s as they were in their mid 20s, sometimes better.
That's rare, even for them.
Even for them, that's true. But last year again, I felt that maybe he wasn't the play-making presence he had been again in his early 20s. Again, almost nobody is in the NFL, but still solid. Still played Brian Flores using him in multiple ways on the defensive line, as a linebacker, quasi linebacker, kind of like Josh Metellus. And the thing that Flores also said about, and it's important to keep in mind with Harrison Smith, is that, Flores said a few times that having Harrison Smith on the field, he was invaluable in being able to get the play, make changes at the line of scrimmage, before the play started with as far as coverages goes, and get players lined up in the right spot or switch the play call or the coverage that they're in, and be able to work with Blake Cashman, who had the green dot on the defense last year, on working on all of that. And so that kind of mental attitude and experience that Harrison Smith has, and the ability to be a coach on the field, that help not just Harrison Smith be a good player, but it helps the other 10 players on the Vikings defense be good players. And that's the sort of thing that Pro Football Focus grades can't take into account, is that sort of mental ability and on-field coach leadership that Harrison Smith has, that experience can only give you, and the amount of time he's had in Brian Flores' defense can only give you, because you're not going to be able to get that, I think, if you draft a rookie as a safety to replace Harrison Smith as your free safety. And even if you selected a free agent, a high-priced free agent to replace him, they've got to learn the Flores defense and even the intricacies and the subtleties of each player on the Vikings defense that Harrison Smith already knows. They might not be able to give that to you either. So Harrison Smith gives you that. Brian Flores really values him. And so I'm quite confident. Happy to see Harrison Smith back. Also quite confident that he's going to be a solid player for us in this defense, and he will help us and not hurt us, just like he has helped us and not hurt us every in his 13 previous seasons with the Vikings. And maybe, just maybe, the Vikings other players can help Harrison Smith get that Super Bowl ring, which will cement his spot in Canton. He's got all the stats to get in there. I think he just needs a ring to solidify getting the yellow jacket whenever he decides to hang him up. But really happy to see Harrison Smith back.
I agree. He's a team leader, and it's what he does on the football field and working his craft and help coordinating what goes on the defense is just, it's invaluable. And I'm glad he's back for another year. And hopefully we go all the way to the Super Bowl and he wins the ring, or at least gets there, but at least wins the ring, or wins the ring, at least getting there. That'll pretty much assure he'll go into Canton. Otherwise, we're fighting about statistics versus errors of football. When Paul Krause, the greatest safety we've ever had, goes in because he's got the interception record. Well, quarterbacks were heaving the ball up back in those days. And, they don't do that these days. They may throw a little bit more, but they're highly accurate, whereas back then it was just a wing and a prayer most of the time. So we all do. We're Vikings fans. We hope we go and win that first Super Bowl. But at least for Harry, I hope it happens.
And he only needs 3 interceptions to get to 40 in his career. He only needs 2.5 sacks to get to 30 in his career. For a safety in the modern day NFL, those are like humongous numbers for sacks, particularly sacks, and for interceptions. The stats, Hitman's got him to make it into Canton. But the FaceTime he has had on the national stage in the playoffs, making big plays, and like Troy Polamalu got a chance to do, or Ed Reed got a chance to do with the Ravens and the Steelers in those days. Hitman doesn't have that. And so I think that we've talked about it before, where that really will hurt him when it comes time to decide on whether he makes it into the Hall of Fame or not, because a lot of writers would not have seen him enough to recognize him for the great player that he is, which is a shame, because Vikings fans know all about Harrison Smith. We don't need to be told how great he's been and how great he is.
Yep. And his personality, he's not as outgoing and gregarious as Troy Polamalu. And people are disagreeing and saying that the greatest was who was it? Joey Browner. Joey Browner was an awesome safety. But Paul Krause, he's got the NFL record. It hasn't been broken, and it probably will never be broken when it comes to interceptions.
When you've got a record like that and played the number of years that Paul Krause played, I know the game was much different even in the mid 80s to early 80s when Browner was at his peak compared to Krause, but still, I would not be able to make that argument either, that Browner was better than Krause. Different eras, but let's just say different eras, and they were both really excellent in those eras.
Yes, they were. And it's just like the Vikings have been blessed with wide receiver talent from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things is we've had a few good safeties, and it's a blessing. So,
yeah.
All right. From that, we go to Mark Kwesi.
cause and effects. I don't know if he's asking us, Dave, or everybody in general, what do we think the Vikings will do in the draft? We'll talk about that a little bit here in a few minutes. But yeah, right now, just looking at, talked earlier about the first wave of free agency, what the Vikings have done, how we're very happy with what they have done. They still have some work to do on the depth side of things. One of the big ones is, or big, I guess it's big right now. It seems big right now is, again, Johnny Munt, just the Munt cake is now a Jacksonville Jaguar, followed Grant Udinsky to Jacksonville. So the Vikings need a number 3 tight end. They don't have one right now. My Vikings target for number 3 tight end, Harrison Bryant, signed with somebody else. So that's disappointing for me, but anyhow, they've got to find a number 3 tight end. Munt's gone. Nick Muse got poached by the Eagles to their roster, so he's not an option. So they need to do something there. They haven't done anything yet so far on that. Wide receiver number 4 and number 5, maybe even number 3 if you don't have much faith in Jalen Naylor. The Vikings need to work on that. They do not. Brandon Powell's a free agent. Trent Sherfield signed with somebody else. Tristan Jackson got poached off our practice squad by Arizona, I believe. He signed with Arizona. So right now we've got Addison, Justin Jefferson, Naylor, and then a bunch of guys on the practice squad like Thayer Thomas, who I don't think any of us have much faith in. So they got to do that. And then there is backup quarterback with guys like Marcus Mariota. Cooper Rush just signed today with the Ravens. Daniel Jones going with the Colts. Gardner Minshew signing with the Chiefs a couple of days ago. The pickings on the backup quarterback side of things are getting very, very slim for the Vikings, and they haven't done anything at backup quarterback yet either. And that has, unfortunately, Dave, and we've talked about it all week on First and SKOL, might as well talk about it again, is it has allowed the noise to build about Aaron Rodgers joining the Vikings, not to be a backup quarterback, by the way, but to be probably the starter. And all I can say about that is just, but you had lots of chatter this week, as late as Friday, really, where you've had particularly the writers from The Athletic talking about how Rodgers is delaying his decision on a team that he wants to play for because he wants to play for the Vikings. And so he's going to let the Vikings weigh the benefits of that. And also the report is that the Vikings are seriously considering in their room bringing Rodgers in to Minnesota. And by that, I think it's pretty clear that Kevin O'Connell has the biggest influence on any quarterback decisions made with Minnesota. So that means apparently Kevin O'Connell is seriously considering this. Now, Dave, we talked about this last week. You and I laughed and joked about this. Thought it was almost rolling our eyes and all that sort of thing. But with the Vikings not having done anything at backup quarterback yet, and with the Vikings being pretty silent on this issue, I'm starting to being not able to laugh about this anymore and think that it might actually be something that they're considering, which would kill me. But if the Vikings really wanted to tamp this down this week, like they normally do, they usually have a welcome to free agency. Look at all these guys we signed. They have Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell stand up in front of the media and talk about all the great signings they made and how great they think these guys are and what great things they're going to do for the Vikings in 2025. Well, this week they were supposed to have that on Wednesday or Thursday. They canceled it apparently, and apparently Phil Mackey was speculating that they did so because they didn't want to answer questions about Aaron Rodgers. But if you weren't seriously considering this, I think that you would have that thing, and when you got asked the question, you just go straight out, Aaron Rodgers is a great player, but J.J. McCarthy is our guy. You could just full stop right there and tamp all this down. They have not done that. Now, maybe they're just laughing because dopes like me are thinking this is serious. But again, the silence and the fact that Rodgers hasn't signed anywhere and the Vikings haven't signed a backup quarterback does, again, worry me a bit because And it worries me because, let's be clear, I don't want Aaron Rodgers in Minnesota. And I've said before that when it comes to quarterback decisions, I have full faith and trust in Kevin O'Connell to do the right thing. But if somehow, and I don't think it's going to happen, Dave, and you don't think it's going to happen, that Aaron Rodgers is going to end up in Minnesota. But if it ever were to happen, my faith in Kevin O'Connell would be shaken to quite a bit degree, because I don't want Aaron Rodgers here for all the reasons that everybody's writing down, have already said. The drama, will he mesh with the team? Will he mesh with the coaches? Is he just going to try to do his own thing and put himself above the team? It's time for the J.J. McCarthy era to begin. So let's stop this nonsense, sign Jameis Winston or whoever the fuck we can sign, and be done with it.
Now, Aaron Rodgers. As we've reported all week, most of the reportings come from The Athletic. Diana Rossini, Mike Silver, and even our beat writer, Alec Lewis. There's been some on SI.com. Will Raggett has not been opposed. There's been a whole bunch opposed and say, nope, it ain't happening. It ain't happening. Nope. What I think it is Aaron Rodgers came to Minnesota begging to play for Minnesota. Why would he beg to play for Minnesota? Because Brett Favre's still in his head, lives there rent free. He wants to complete what Brett Favre did. He's always wanted to be better than Brett Favre. He wanted to be better than Brett Favre in Green Bay. Brett Favre went to 2 Super Bowls, won one. Rodgers only went to 1, won it. That's it. Then they went to, the Jets. Let's see who does better. Rodgers brought that circus there. 4th play of his first season, boom, Achilles. And then last year, the whole conflict with the coach, getting people fired, all that sort of stuff. The whole once a week stuff. Do you think Kwesi wants that? Messing with him? Think Kevin O'Connell wants that? I don't think so. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if they do all this. I don't think they will. But it's interesting to see because I can't see it. I'm hearing word, and somebody had just said they heard $100 million is what he's asking. Mm-hmm. And I heard originally 3 years at about $100 million, over $30 million a year to start. Yeah. Well, that blows the whole J.J. McCarthy theory out the window. And even though we still have some money, it doesn't grow on trees. And this was never part of the plan. No matter how much of a douchebag he is, to quote somebody, Aaron here. And who was it that I saw that I quoted and sent you the quote of the night? Oh, Paul Allen. Mm-hmm. He says he didn't want the jackass here. There's something to that effect. He used the word jackass. Paul Allen said that. And it's interesting. Now,
employed by the Vikings.
Yeah. Does Kevin O'Connell want him? I'm sure Kevin goes, well, I could do this, I could do that. Especially if he was backing up JJ. But even then, if he was backing up JJ, if he had said, I'm going to be a backup, $10 million a year, I still don't see it because of the distraction, the circus he brings to town. And he's brought the circus. We've had all this week the Aaron Rodgers circus in Minneapolis, in Eagan. And it's distracting everybody. We haven't got the interviews with our new players. And it's crazy. I don't think we're going to do anything. I think we're going to hear shortly either they're going to make a statement that J.J. McCarthy's the guy, or they're going to make a statement that they hired backup quarterback of some sort. Whether it be Tannehill, which I think is a possibility because, as we've discussed, Tannehill's agent is J.J. McCarthy's agent, and Tannehill didn't play next year. And if they got Tannehill, he has the experience to mentor J.J. in the room, different stuff. Plus, he doesn't count towards the comp pick formula because he did not play last year. Whereas most of the other backups would count towards the comp pick formula. So I just think it's an Aaron Rodgers circus that he brought here. And it's a distraction that we do not need anymore. Let's focus on how great Kwesi's done so far and how this team is stacked now and looking better than going into free agency. And in a tough division, I think they are nailed it. I think they've, taken lessons from the Eagles on how to win deep into playoffs and how to win games on the line. They've improved their running game, their offensive line, their defensive line, their pass rush. This is done great. But this guy is bringing it all down for us, and he doesn't need to be. Why would we want him? That's just no.
And Jose is, and God love him, is the only one in the chat that I can see who's very much in favor of bringing in Rodgers. And to be fair to Jose, you're talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer here, and
4-time MVP.
Yeah,
but it hasn't
not.
Been
It just like the resume is impeccable, on the field, right? And even last year, even though people say he had a bad year last year, and the QBR and the passer rating does say he was a guy who was kind of middle of the pack or maybe a little below that, but he did not have a great situation in New York on the field going on there. He was supposed to elevate them to the so that wouldn't be such an issue. He was supposed to take them a couple of steps up from where they ended up, and that didn't happen. But I think that you look at it and you go, man, if he could do what Brett Favre did in 2009, he's still got a strong arm. He still can move around a bit. He's still got it up here. It makes sense if you can talk yourself into it. But I just feel that, just again, the circus is the one thing. I just think the odds of this working out as well as things worked out with Brett Favre in 2009 are slim to none. History would not repeat itself in this case. And plus, you got a guy that probably is even worse of an issue, more of an issue with off the field stuff, and than even Favre ever was. Mm-hmm. So it's just bad news all around. And you got a rookie quarterback that you didn't have in 2019, who's supposed to be your franchise guy, and you just don't want to mess with that, I think.
Joshua, as I understand it, Rodgers went to the Vikings, not vice versa.
Allegedly.
And it makes sense. We'll see. And, besides he's going to be 42, and he hasn't had a good season in years, on top of being busting his Achilles 2 years ago. I just don't see it. I wouldn't bet on him. Throw in the locker room cancer allegations that when he's not winning, he's always throwing teammates under the bus. No, it's not worth it. Our coach and Kwesi built a culture. Everybody likes each other for the most part, at least while in the locker room and on the field. That's something. And to bring him in there, that would be like throwing a Molotov cocktail in there. I just know. Yeah. And I don't think he would give, even if healthy, I don't think he would give the Vikings the best chance, Jose, to win. I think J.J. McCarthy would give a better chance to win than a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers. But that's me.
Yeah. I am just, call me crazy, but I'm just ready to see what we have in J.J. McCarthy. And I think that unless Rodgers was going to give you a Super Bowl ring and lead you to a Super Bowl victory, then bringing him on would be just a waste of time. Yeah, you want all a great record and a big long playoff run would be great, but we've seen those before, not too much lately. The thing that Viking fans haven't seen is a Super Bowl ring, and I don't think that Aaron Rodgers can bring it to you at this stage in his career. So if he can't bring it to you, then you start with a guy who you think can bring it to you. Maybe not next year, but maybe 2 or 3 years from now, and that guy is J.J. McCarthy. Let's get on with it, please.
Yes, please. All right. Now to the next segment.
Well, we said earlier there was a comment made about what are the Vikings going to do in the draft, and I think that's a great question, and we're going to talk a little bit about it here in our final segment of This Week in Vikings Land, which is that, but related to free agency, Dave, again, this is something that you brought up this week. Great point, I thought, and we wanted to discuss it now, is that the Vikings have been very, very busy in free agency here, and they have addressed a lot of weaknesses. A week ago on the show, I was saying this really feels like a year where the Vikings are going to go defensive line early because it's a deep defensive line class in the draft. A lot of good players there that we could get, and we have a huge need there. Well, now that you've signed Jonathan Allen, now that you've signed Javon Hargrave, that is not a big need anymore. Maybe I would say right now, if I had to look at it, I would say of our biggest needs coming into free agency, I think cornerback still looks like it might be the one where right now I would think that might be my bet for who we target in our first pick, whether that's the first round or second round, depending on what we do. Because I'm not convinced the Vikings are going to go with Byron Murphy Jr., Isaiah Rodgers, and Mekhi Blackman coming off an ACL as your top 3 corners. And then also depending on Dwight McGlothern, who was an undrafted rookie free agent and didn't play very much last year, and him being your number 4 guy on the depth chart. That's why I think cornerback could be something they target early in the draft. But I still don't feel terrible about the Vikings cornerback room right now. And like I said, I think Rodgers is a sneaky good selection by them. And I did like what Mekhi Blackman did as a rookie. I think he has a lot of promise. So they're not barren at cornerback. And so really with the way what the Vikings have done, I think, Dave, like you said, with free agency, they have set themselves up to go BPA in the draft. Best player available, whether they pick at 24 in the first round or sometime later in the first round or sometime early in the second round if they trade out of that. I think that best player available, they are in position with what they've done in free agency to do that. And you couldn't say that a week ago. And I like having options at draft time. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, with how busy he has been and how effective he has been at addressing roster weaknesses, he's got us in a position where we've got options. All options are available to us to draft early in the draft with our first pick as to where we want to go. We don't have to just go for a guard because we have a big, huge hold there. We don't anymore. Same thing on defensive line. We don't have to rush it or feel pressured into signing or drafting a defensive lineman because you signed Allen and Javon Hargrave. Even the same at corner in a way. Same at safety with what they've done in signing Theo Jackson, extending him, and bringing man Hitman. So I think we're in a good place with the draft. And also with the way our roster is, Dave, I think that the Vikings don't even really, at least right now, if you're looking at it, they don't need a rookie to come in, and it'd be nice, but they don't need a rookie to come in and make a huge impact at defensive line or corner or the interior offensive line because of what we've done in free agency. The roster is strong, really strong right now, whereas we don't need that impact Micah Parsons guy coming into the rookie. It'd be nice, but you don't need it. You could be patient with a prospect early on. You could select a defensive lineman who you don't have to play a ton of snaps early because of what you've done in free agency. So a lot of stuff open to the Vikings coming into the draft, and I like that optionality.
I agree. It gives us options that we didn't have, and it could go anywhere. It could go Gray Zabel if he hits there, or any of the guys that you're seeing pop up here that would be a great fit, a running back. If, hey, Kenty fell to 24, grab him. Not that he will, but, that's the sort of deal. It's if somebody drops and the team's all for it, yeah, grab him, whether we need him or not, because we're there. We're at that point, and it's wonderful. It's been forever since we were at a BPA in a draft, and that's obviously something that Kwesi has done. He's gotten us to that point. He's gotten us to where we can do BPA. And that's amazing, because we've always been, well, we got to fill this hole or that hole or this hole. We'll go BPA, but BPA for filling these holes. If we needed an offensive lineman, we'd go BPA. That's how we got Garrett Bradbury. That's it. And it's just, we'll see. Or we could trade down and accumulate more picks. Now, for those that are saying free agency isn't over, you are correct. Free agency is not over. Not at all. The first wave's done. We're into the second wave. And then there'll eventually be the third wave. And if you figure it out, first wave are players that are all starters generally and tend to get overpaid. The second wave are guys that can start or may not start, but are benefits, will benefit the team, and you're getting it at a reasonable price. And then the third wave are going to be vets that are going to play for a vet minimum or a little bit more, and that's it, period. Now, third wave will roll. Second wave will roll probably through this week, continuing, and then we'll move into third wave up through and beyond the draft. Third wave they'll take a break for the draft. All the teams will, and then they'll, draft players, and then they'll go back and hit the old vets that, to fill holes type deal. And we'll see from there. But as of right now, Kwesi getting us to a BPA where we don't have any immediate, you got to have spots to fill. Yeah, we want depth. We want competition. Absolutely. Like I said, Gray Zabel could compete for the left guard or center. And I think it's great. Like I said, we've commented publicly on this team. We blogged about it. Shit, I started writing back in the 90s and commenting on it, the late 90s. And it's just, I don't remember a time like this. This is wonderful. We've had money. They're spending it well, wisely, how they're fixing, arranging the contracts and everything. And I think it's doing great. As long as they don't screw it up and bring in a certain quarterback. Yeah, Mike Hilton, baby. Mentioned him last week. But
I think the one thing about the draft that the Vikings do need, even though they can go BPA, it was mentioned in a comment previously about a trade out of 97, their third round comp pick for a fifth and a seventh, but draft picks. Let's get to that. The Vikings only have 4. We learned this week that they got the 97th in the third round, the top comp pick overall officially. So we officially have 4, but that ain't enough. The Vikings, I think, at least got to have 6 draft picks in this draft, and so Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is going to have to be cooking and busy again to acquire those. And I feel that we've got to find a way to get back into the second round and the fourth round, or third, get another third, get back into those rounds and get back some of those picks that we gave up to trade for Dallas Turner in particular, and the trade with Houston before that to get a second first round pick. We need to recoup some of those. And, I think that's very important with the Vikings right now. I think the best way it seems the obvious way to do that would be at 24 for the Vikings to trade down. There's been a lot of people advocating for the Vikings to do that. One thing about that though, last year though, looking at the trades early on in the first day that were made last year, trading out of the first round into the second or whatever, that you did see teams. The way the trades are working now is it seems rare that teams are getting an extra pick out of that who trade down, but they're getting a pick in the next draft, not this one. That's not I mean, that's going to help the Vikings if they're able to do that, but I think they need extra picks in this draft. Like if they trade out of 24 and go down to like somewhere in the second round, and then they get the other team's second rounder, but they give up their 24, and then they get a second rounder in 2026. I don't love that as much as getting an extra second rounder or a second rounder and a fifth rounder in 2025 when we only have 4 draft picks right now. So I think Kwesi's going to have to be very creative and be working the phones a ton in this draft to get that 5th and 6th draft pick and possibly a 7th. There's going to have to be a lot of horse trading going on, and it's getting harder to fleece teams in the draft like maybe you used to. So they got to get it done, though. They got to get it done and get at least 6 draft picks when it's all said and done. I don't know how they're going to do it, though. It's going to be tough.
And T-Bass says we still need to address the lack of depth at linebacker. Yes, we do. We need to address depth in every position, basically. But we're talking about depth. We're not talking about starters this year. And that's what's different. And every team has to address depth. You lose it through attrition every year. So I think it's wonderful. But yes, we do. Now, one last topic. I saw the machine, Tony, bring it up. Vikings put out that wide receiver Paul Flatley passed away today. 1963 Rookie of the Year. That's before my time. I was born in 63, but I don't remember him. But he was Rookie of the Year. He passed away, and so we want to pay our respects, have him rest in peace, and until Valhalla, and hopefully he'll help watch us win a Super Bowl.
From up top, we did a Vikings vault on Paul Flatley last summer. The thing was, we billed it as the Vikings' first big play wide receiver, because Paul had a couple of years there, 2 or 3 with the Vikings, where his yards per catch were really, really insane for a wide receiver in that era and any era. So yes, sad to hear that one of the first early Vikings has passed away. There's been, unfortunately, too many of them that have done so the past 2 or 3 years.
Now, I want to thank everybody for showing up and debating and giving your comments. They've absolutely rocked. Even you, Jose. It's okay. It was a fun day to talk about how well the Vikings have done in this free agency. I wish we could celebrate it more with some interviews and stuff like that and get the Aaron Rodgers circus out of the way. And hopefully that will happen soon, but we will find out. And when we do, we'll probably be doing a show either way. But I want to thank everybody for coming up and supporting us this week. You guys have absolutely rocked. We've got great visibility on all the shows, and we appreciate it from deep in our hearts. You guys absolutely rock. And we're looking forward to a great 2025 season. Any final words there, Darren?
Well, it seems pretty clear from like you said, the amount of people who have been tuning into the shows all week on First and SKOL, that this week has gotten Viking fans really excited and jazzed about this team and where it's going in 2025. And that is great to see, because it's been exciting, and now you're kind of like, come on, training camp, preseason, let's get here.
Yes. Let's see the guys moving around. Yes. Let's see J.J. McCarthy throwing the J.J.
So, thanks to everybody with the comments. There have been a ton of them today. Great interaction from everybody, a respectful interaction, which is great. And just keep on coming back. We'll be here next Sunday.
Yep. And until then, what do we say?
We say, SKOL, baby. SKOL Vikings, baby. Sorry. Got to get the Vikings in there.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!